Hey Ruthie, it's good to see you.
Hi, it's good to be
I
seen.
I would love to see you anytime. I'm so glad that you're joining us and you're taking over you're doing the Food Hub stuff at Black Food Sovereignty Coalition now, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So
Teva, are you
um,
breaking up with us?
you better not be, because
Not at all. I This will be something I talk about in my intro, but I am moving into I am now our operations manager and grants manager. So
Oh
yay.
wow. Can
yeah,
I get your autograph? Can I say
please.
I knew you when?
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah.
Amazing. Look at this amazing group. Carrie, thank you so much for participating as a panelist. Yana, thank you for participating as a panelist. Christy at the Small Farms Conference. I understand you are all pretty amazing. Um, and
We were.
Delana is pretty amazing. You were pretty amazing. You can confirm.
Yeah, we were pretty amazing. And thanks to Maud for the speaker reception on Friday. That was real nice.
Yeah, it was great to
Oh,
have some of you there. I just wrote in, I'm eating lunch, so I'm gonna hide my video.
yeah. Yeah, anybody who needs to hide the video. Elle, I get to see you too. This is amazing. This is like the best day ever. I feel like I'm seeing so many folks. Like it's sort of a different lineup today, which is really fun. Like I haven't seen Shantae in a little bit. Haven't seen Elle in person in a little bit. This is really great. All right, y'all. So we did the Oregon Food Hub Network took part in a 2-year regional food system partnership planning grant. And a piece of that planning grant was we took a look at what does climate resilience look like for food hubs? How do we want to think about these things? How do we want to talk about these things? How do we want to take steps in our food hubs to improve our climate resilience or participate in climate resilience generally? So we have the great delight of having Teva from Black Food Sovereignty Coalition and Lindsay from Food Roots come and talk to us about what they learned in that process and what they have taken back to their hubs. And I can't remember who we decided was going to talk first. Was it you, Teva?
Yep, it was
Okay, awesome. Take it away.
awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Teva Needleman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with Black Food Sovereignty Coalition. As we've sort of already hinted at, I was previously our senior food systems program manager, but I am now our operations and grants manager, which has been super exciting transition, partially because the organization is undergoing a tremendous amount of operations changes. And so we're reconfiguring a lot of things, and we found a real need for our operations to have a dedicated person to be in charge of them. So I am now getting to do that and step out of the programmatic side of things, which feels good, being the only white person on staff to be able to be in more of a behind the scenes role. And Ruthie is actually going to be stepping in as our amazing new community food and wellness coordinator, which is going to be awesome. And she's going to get to participate in this network a lot more, which will be great. I've been with the organization for a couple years, and I have been sort of helping expand and create new versions of our food hub programming. Black Food Sovereignty Coalition is a food justice organization that is really focused on Black liberation. And I feel like through this whole process, when we were creating our action plans, there were so many different ways that we could talk about liberation and justice. But there was almost like an internal pull of like, should we present at the one that's about like race equity? But I feel like talking about sustainability is actually a better framing to talk about liberation work, because if we're trying to create true sustainability, there's no way to do that without dismantling systems of white supremacy. If we genuinely want to be creating sustainable solutions, we need to be looking at the root causes and like diving into the oppressive systems that ultimately are unsustainable. So I was really stoked that when we were given the opportunity to present, I could talk about sustainability and how we sort of weave that and like really weave a community sustainability lens through all of our programs. Being a part of the cohort was super cool. I sort of came in I'd say maybe halfway through the process, maybe a little over halfway through. So I got to get to know so many amazing people across the state, and it was really just thrilling to get to see all of the different ways that food hubs can exist. I'm going to dive into some of our programs and how we're like trying to weave the sustainability lens through it, and like specifically a community sustainability and viability lens through our programmatic things. Looking at Black Futures Farm, which is our regenerative agriculture farm in Southeast Portland, our equipment lending program that we're building out right now, and our aftermarket purchasing program that is expanding into our full throttle food hub programming. So Black Futures Farm is our regenerative, I believe it's just shy of 5-acre farm in Southeast Portland. It does a tremendous amount of community-facing programs focusing on health and wellness and education. But one of the most exciting things that we're able to implement right now is we have PSEF funding, which is the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And we're being given the opportunity to solarize the farm and our farming facilities. And it's a great way to invest in like green infrastructure for the farm and also for the community to be able to come and learn at the farm. Once everything is installed, which will be happening this spring, which is really exciting, we're going to be able to have community-facing programs where people can come and interact with the new solar equipment and learn about it, and have folks come in and like actually get to learn about how to install it. There's going to be an apprenticeship program for an individual who's going to get to actually learn from the people who are installing it with us. Lots of really great stuff. And it's looking at sustainability, not only with the green infrastructure investment, but community sustainability with the ability to really delineate knowledge sharing, which is also sort of feeds into our equipment lending program. We have currently a pre-harvest equipment lending program, which involves an electric tractor and a winnow wizard, which like is a seed sorter. And these are resources and other pieces of equipment, but these are resources that are available to Black and brown farmers to be able to borrow for a few weeks if they need them, to be able to use them and not have to make that equipment investment necessarily, because funding for these kind of things are hard to get. And also, if you're only going to use it for 2 weeks, that doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense for you to invest $2,000 in a piece of equipment. So BFSC is building out this lending library of pieces of equipment that people can borrow and then bring back and share. And it's a real communal resource sharing space, which leads into sustainability, because we don't also need to be continually buying and consuming, but when we can share and like find those points of connection and intentionality, it's really great. Right now, we're writing an RFSI infrastructure or equipment grant to be able to purchase a bunch of post-harvest pieces of equipment, processing equipment. And those pieces will be available in our food hub for our growers to be able to come and borrow a dehydrator if they need it, or a freeze dryer, or milling equipment, different pieces like that, so that they can extend their season, be able to create more products, and stock our food hub with more things that are shelf stable. Which leads us right into our food hub. Our food hub activities have been going on since 2020. Maybe even before that, but I know in 2020, we really had an uptick in food distribution as an organization, but we haven't had a home base. But now BFSC, through our PSEF funding, has been able to acquire a headquarters, and we're actually building out a little mini hub that is going to be able to have cold storage and freezer space and dry storage for folks to be able to come in and access. We have an aftermarket purchasing program, which uses LFPA funds from OCFSN. Actually, was our we were able to channel them from Oregon Food Bank through OCFSN to get them. And we were able to use those funds to purchase produce that was unsold at our farmers market, the Come Through Farmers Market. It was all food that would have ended up in in landfills and would have just been lost as food waste. And so instead we were able to give our farmers a flat rate of $250 and purchase the food directly from them. Because we didn't have our own facility to process, we partnered with an organization called Feed the Mass, and they do meal distribution and processing for folks who are unhoused and other community organizations. They partner with Afro Village and Boys and Girls Club and a bunch of, and Feed and Freedom Foundation as distribution partners. With the LFPA funds, we were able to buy 2,197 pounds of food that would have otherwise gone to waste. And that diverted 4,147 pounds of CO2 from the landfills, which was like really, really exciting. And then we were able to donate that. And with that food, they were able to make 6,238 meals. And we got just over $10,000 directly into the hands of farmers. So it was like a win-win-win across the board. And I just submitted a PSEF grant for us to be able to expand this program to 5 farmers markets across the city of Portland to work with Black and brown growers across the city. The goal is to be able to buy 55,000 pounds of food waste over the next 3 years, which will equate to 105,000 pounds of CO2 being diverted. And food for 145,000 people. I'm like trying to look at the time and I'm like, have I been talking for too long? I'm so sorry. I'm realizing that I was given 5 minutes and I feel like I've been talking for an hour. So I guess I'm gonna stop. And are there any questions?
Tara, thank you. That is a pretty amazing distillation of, wow, we need to think about resilience and we need to think about sustainability. And we're doing these programs. So how about we make sure that we're weaving those values into our programmatic effort? So I think, I'd hope that all of you are taking that away from this, that they were able to like leverage funding that they were already using for other things and understand it in a way that created more resilience.
Yeah, I guess is now a time for questions? Or do we want Lindsay to go and then we can do
Let's go
questions?
ahead and have Lindsay go, and then we'll do a round robin of questions, because you know how our questions can be. They lead all kinds of places that we don't expect.
Totally.
You are
Lindsay, you're
muted.
Muted. All right, except for being muted, I'm up. All right, so I am coming to you from Food Roots in Tillamook. My name is Lindsay Ward. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently the Marketplace Operations Manager here. And I'm coming in from a different location in Food Roots. We are in the farm to school, more of a closet now than it used to be. We're in the middle of a huge transition right now where we have given our notice to our renter here for our farm to school room and moved to kind of decrease our rent while we're in a transitional period to a new location downtown. But the construction for that new location, of course, being construction, keeps getting put out with natural disasters such as ice storms and severe flooding. And so we're now in a very kind of farm to school marketplace condensed location. So we've jam-packed farm to school into this room, and we have other things encroaching in on our marketplace space. So we're kind of in an interesting transitional period. However, us moving to a new higher visibility, higher accessibility location downtown will hopefully do what it has done in the past and allow us to really increase farmer sales. For both value-added products, for meat products, for produce, and all the produce and the meat and everything that we sell from these farmers, they're all grown or let's say, I don't know what the word is for meat. I'm having a hard time thinking of it. Grown or raised. And then butchered in the most sustainable way possible. So without the use of chemical fertilizers, without the use of pesticides and herbicides, and that is really climate friendly work that these farmers are doing. And so by supporting them through increased sales to both institutions, businesses, and to individual consumers as well, that can really help us foster a resilient climate out here on the Oregon coast, where we have a very narrow geographic range between the ocean and the Cascades. So climate resilience is really, and financial resilience is really an important factor to sustain farmers, because we can't just depend on farmers when natural disasters hit and no one can get through the Cascades. We need to support them and nurture them so that they can thrive up to and including through these natural disasters where we'll be depending on them. So aside from, the natural good that we all do supporting these amazing producers, we can also have impacts in other ways. And in Food Roots, this is on a much smaller scale than Teba was talking about. We are in a period of great transition. We also moved in September of 2022 out here because of building safety concerns at our previous downtown location. We've had a lot of staff and board transitions and continue to have a lot of staff and board transitions for a variety of reasons here at Food Roots. So instead of looking at huge grant opportunities and taking huge new steps, which is such an important part of climate resilience that certain organizations can currently take part in, we are taking a much more scaled down approach that our organization is actually capable of because of where we are at this moment in time. So for example, like staff where we are on the coast will all be trained in evacuation protocols that the town has in place. And then we also out here at the Port Potomac Bay, they have a stormwater runoff protocol approach that we all took part in their training of to ensure that any stormwater that is runoff down into the system, that Food Roots isn't contaminating. So we all took part in that training. Other than that, we are contributing to climate resilience via other grants that we are currently a part of. So we've had a lot of purchasing we could do in food storage and transportation throughout a number of different grants. And so we're making sure that our purchases are as eco-friendly as possible, either used or, we're repairing something like a broken down fridge compressor instead of buying a new fridge. So we're being really not only financially responsible, but with those finances, we're also being as eco-friendly as we can with the money afforded to us. I think that's really about all I had to say.
Lindsay, one of the things I really like about this contrast between what Black Food Sovereignty Coalition has done and what Food Roots is doing is that it seems very clear that there is no one right way to approach this problem. And we all have to show up to this problem understanding that we are not, as individuals, we are not, as food hubs, probably fixing the world today, the entire world on our backs with our programming today. But we can make choices about how we do our work that make improvements in it. And, Black Food Sovereignty Coalition was in a position to do what sounds like some pretty big and amazing and exciting things. And I think we can all be really excited about it and admire that effort. And Food Roots was in a very different place when you started taking over this planning project. And you've done a really, really good job of looking at your organization and thinking, what makes sense for us? And you know what? This is what makes sense for us. And you're still putting the building blocks in place. And I think that is no less important than the big things that are really exciting and really visible, but really, embedding those values in the way you make choices about your programming is just as important as launching a new program.
Oh, I did remember one more thing I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Please do.
So I'm deeply embedded in Marketplace as Marketplace manager, but we also have this whole other component of Food Roots. So when I was going through and finalizing the climate plan that was originally started by Lauren Sorg, our previous executive director, and Marissa Zerngast, our previous Marketplace manager, I reached out also to one of our farm to school educators, Brooke, about really what she wanted to include in our climate resilience plan. And so a lot of that is education to children. So we're introducing them to these farmers and these concepts of sustainable agriculture. And then also the farm to school program has gardens that they help nurture and build at these schools. And so the kids take part in these organic and sustainable agricultural practices. So that's a big part of kind of climate resilience and moving climate resilience into the concept into the next generation, the concept and the practices. They also grow food that they distribute out to volunteers. They bring home. As certain schools allow, they can just be distributed out into the classrooms as well. And so they're making sure that they're just not providing food that is just going to go to waste. You know, it has a home, it's being consumed. And then in addition to that, any produce that Food Roots has that is that goes bad, cannot be donated safely to a food pantry for consumption or to a food bank. It goes right into the farm to school bins, and the students learn about composting and use that in their school gardens. But before composting, the first step is always, while the food is still good, but maybe we shouldn't be selling it anymore, or it's like reach the end of its date that we like to hold it to sell before we donate it, because everything has dates. We want to distribute it out to food pantries and food banks. So we'll hold it for a set amount of time, but while it is still safe to consume and has a shelf life, if it hasn't sold, we want to make sure that it's not just going to end up in a composter going bad. So then we give it to people who need it. So that's part of our model as well.
Great. What questions do we have? I know there's at least one in the chat for Teva. Aaron, I think Maylo, I think that was you. Are there other questions that are starting to bubble up? You can either drop them in the chat or shout them out. Raise your hand. I'll try and catch you. Aaron wanted to know more, Teva, about the actual, purchasing of the food waste and what you mean by food waste.
Yeah. So what the food waste that we specifically were targeting in the pilot was unsold produce from Black and brown farmers at the come through market. We had a budget of around $850 per market to be able to purchase. And there were 3 main farmers that we worked with. And what I started with was just going and saying, I have $200. What do you feel comfortable giving me for $200? Because I didn't want it to feel like we were expecting them to give us everything, because I hadn't yet built a relationship with the folks. And it was a lot of leafy greens and tomatoes and the more perishable produce that wouldn't be able to make it to the next farmer's market. They often kept onions and more like winter squash kind of squashes that could potentially sell at a market that was 2 weeks away. So we were able to start at that place of just like, whatever you feel comfortable giving me. And by the second, I would say probably by the 4th market, it was pretty like established, like, oh, I will be getting this block of money at the end. And so more and more produce was being given. And by the end, I was getting anything that they had left, which was a really exciting and like, I don't know how to explain it. It felt really good to know that like there was a level of safety and comfort that was being established by having this aftermarket produce purchasing experience. And so it was all of the fresh produce, perishable produce that was unsold at the end of the market. And in this new iteration or expanded iteration of the AMP is what I call it, we're going to be able to purchase proteins and like perishable value-added goods, so like breads and other baked goods from folks. And those will specifically be able to be put into our food boxes, which was a program I didn't get to mention because I got all flustered in my own brain. But we're going to be able to do with our new space, have community come in and do like weekly food box pickups that'll have produce and hopefully some proteins, if that is what folks want, and baked goods and whatever we're able to salvage from the 5 farmers markets.
And then are you preserving any of that too? Like, we have a freeze dryer in our kitchen that we have never used. And because I'm really intimidated by it. But that's what I was thinking. Like, so are you giving away the produce boxes, I assume?
Yeah.
And then I wonder if you could like preserve, do you do any of that?
We don't currently, but with this RFSI grant that we're writing, we're trying to purchase those kind of post-harvest processing equipments. And then we're hoping to, once we have them and have them for the lending library, when they're not in use in the lending library, or like designate times that we can actually do community facing programming, where we can have mill your own corn days, where folks can come learn about how to mill corn, get to see it, get to interact with the farmers that grew the corn, and then also have in our kitchen a demo on how to make cornbread or something with the cornmeal that is being milled. And then all of that can be taken home, and then there will be a need for it. And then people will be like, wow, I really want to get some more fresh milled cornmeal. And then they'll have a farmer to be able to buy that from, because that farmer has been able to borrow the mill from us and mill a bunch of their corn and sell it at the farmer's market that we run. And so we're trying to create, yeah, those opportunities to holistically approach things and have people be able to salvage the stuff. What I don't know the capacity, is that a me question, the capacity of the freeze dryer?
That's Ken getting derailed by, well, actually, I also got derailed by Aaron's freeze dryer because of the intense jealousy that I'm experiencing that you have one. And I know I'm not the only one. Apparently Ken is also one who is jealous of the freeze dryer. Do we have some other questions for Teva or Lindsay about their climate resilience strategies?
Carrie had a question.
Where is it?
That
Yeah,
is
I
a really
had
good.
one in the chat. I was just trying to figure out how you provide assurances to the producers that you'll purchase their market leftovers and yet still make sure what you take home with you is marketable and safe to eat. Because after it's sat out in the heat for 4 to 6 hours, it's not always in a state where you can use it. You might be able to process it, but then you need to be able to do that immediately.
Yeah, well, so that is a big piece of it. In this past, that's a piece that we're gonna have to figure out specifically in the expansion, because the food was getting donated the next morning. It would sit in cold storage overnight, get donated the next morning, and get processed the next day. So it had a pretty quick turnaround, and could be used even if it had sat out. I think that is one of the kinks that Ruthie and I are going to have to troubleshoot as we start to do the actual food boxes with these produce. A lot of the stuff that we had purchased was coming straight out of coolers because it never even made it to the stand because they had potentially over harvested, or a couple of the farmers that we worked with had some just more like technical challenges where they only accepted cash and they couldn't accept a certain type of SNAP. And so they were not having a tremendous amount of sales. So a lot of their product was just going unsold and didn't have a way to make it into people's mouths end up. So I think that will be one of the pieces that we need to figure out for sure. Thank you for asking that.
Other questions in this group? And Jasmine, you're on the hook now. You have to do a presentation.
Another one.
Yep, I'll be reaching out after this meeting. Don't you worry. We want to know all about your freeze dryer too, and Aaron needs to know how to use one. Oh yeah, look at all these nodding heads. You're on the hook for sure.
All right.
Other questions in this group? Did I miss any in the chat? Shin, it's so fun to have you. Like you keep my socks pulled up so nice. Going once, going twice. Nothing. All right. So we're going to hear about the Food Hub Network Infrastructure and Worker Safety Grants. And we have on this call Deidara, who some of you have talked to. Deidara is she is our coordinator for these grants and is delightful and amazing and makes me so happy every time I get to talk to her. So I hope that you all learn that Deidara is delightful and amazing and that you also love talking to her. But she's going to run through a presentation about those grants, about how to apply for them. And then we're also going to spend some time asking and answering questions at the end of this to hopefully get you all prepared to submit your grants.
Thank you, Sydney. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen momentarily. Keep in mind, I won't be able to see any of your chats. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll review them at the end. And if it's an urgent one, I'm hoping to tag team with
I'll keep
Shin
an
and
eye on it.
Sydney. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let me see here. All right, how's that look? Are we okay? Cool. Thank you for the thumbs up. Okay, so as Sydney mentioned, my name is Deodara, and I am helping all of you or some of you apply with this with our great grant program here. So we're going to review the Food Hub Worker Safety and Infrastructure Grant Program, which is open now, and it will be open until the 15th of March until 11:45 Pacific time. All of the materials can be found online on OCFSN's website right here. There's a direct link. We can also provide supporting documents at the end of this meeting. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the agenda for today will look like. So first, we will be reviewing who is this grant for, a little bit of a programmatic overview, our grant program goals, funding details like the specifics and logistics. We have the timeline to keep y'all on track. We have qualifications and preferences. I will be going into an application deep dive into certain areas where we noticed additional support was needed. We will review increasing resilience within these programs, as well as reviewing the rubric. And last but not least, there will be a Q&A section where we will be discussing some of the questions that y'all brought up in the survey. Thank you to those who inputted your information. I really appreciated that, and it really helped me structure this presentation today. But like I said, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll also be reviewing them at the end. So the Food Hub Worker Safety Grants Program, the funding from these grants is for supporting Oregon's food hubs and building local economies and disaster resilience. And really quickly, here is an overview of the logistics end of it. So we received funding from the Oregon legislative session in 2023. This will be managed through OCFSN, and the applications will be reviewed by a grant committee, which is comprised of folks with expertise and extensive knowledge in local food systems and food hubs. This builds on the successful OCFSN's 2022 Farmer and Rancher Disaster Resilience Program. A little bit about our goals. We want this to be an accessible grant program. And when we say accessible, we mean as accessible as any grant you will ever apply to. And that's why we're hoping that this info session will help you feel supported and recognize that I am a resource to you. If you've been a little bit shy or nervous about reaching out, I'm hoping this will be an icebreaker for you. But overall, let's go over the additional goals. We do want to prioritize food hubs building local economies, as well as disaster resilience. We are prioritizing hubs located and or serving rural communities. Of course, we are also prioritizing hubs led by and served by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, also known as BIPOC, immigrant and refugee communities. In addition to that, we are prioritizing hubs that have limited access to grant funding and demonstrates commitment to delivering OCFSN's mission. Provide direct support to grant applicants to navigate their challenges with the application process. So again, really want to be there to support you and make you have a successful process throughout entering in your application. And our last but not least goal is to gather robust reporting and testimonial. And we'll go over that a little bit at the end. So this is a little bit about the funding details. So you cannot apply for both small and large grants in one funding cycle, but you can apply for one worker safety grant and one infrastructure grant in the same year. And then also really quickly. So if you're interested in doing a low barrier worker safety grants and a low barrier infrastructure grant, that is something you can do as well. And if you have any questions, if what you can and cannot do in terms of applying, feel free to put it in the chat. In addition to that, if you have received a grant in 2024, you cannot apply in 2025. Applicants may be awarded partial funding, and this is in the application process where we ask you to rank which projects you would like to be funded if we have partial funding. In addition to that, there's no requirements for matching funds in this. You will receive upfront payments. Grant funds must directly support the grant purpose to improve disaster resilience in food hubs. And then funding from this grant program may be able to be used as cost share for federal conservation or other funding. Here's a quick little breakdown of the differences between the two grants we have. So we have the worker safety, which is split into 2 tiers. So we have low barrier, which awards up to $4,099 for any needed safety equipment, training, and supplies. There's also capacity building awards between $5,000 and $25,000. Next, we have our infrastructure grant program. Low barrier awards up to $4,999 for emerging and lower volume hubs. And capacity building is for more established hubs that move high volumes of food and have been established for 1 year. And that can be awarded up to $5,000 to $75,000. So this is just this is not an exhaustive list, and I imagine there are going to be some questions. So we're going to have time for that at the end to ask, what kinds of other items qualify and do not qualify. So really quickly, for the worker safety grants, the first 3 listed here are low barrier items that qualify. So pallet jacks, electric jacks, racking, fatigue mats, rolling carts, hand trucks, cargo tie downs. And for capacity building, there's vehicle lift gates, vehicle ramps, equipment install costs. For infrastructure grants, low barrier, the first 3 again, may include chest freezers, bins, tables, rolling carts, and other packing equipment, as well as storage equipment. And for capacity building, there's vehicles, walk-in coolers / freezers, walk-in install costs, including electrical upgrades. This is not an exhaustive list, and there's also a further detailed list, maybe like a couple on the websites, but we will review if you all have any questions about what does and does not qualify at the end. Here's a timeline for us for 2024, and 2025 will be similar. It may change. It's subject to change depending, but for now, this is the timeline we see for 2024 is concrete. 2025 is the one where it may change. So applications have been open and will be open until the 15th. We will send the awards and announcements on April 15th, 2024, and then funds will be delivered by May 15th, 2024. Similar to that will happen in 2025, subject to change. Okay, here we have qualifications and preferences. And in addition to this, you can find all the definitions provided in the guidelines or the request RFP. So first, you must meet our working definition of a food hub, which I will go in depth in the next slide. You must be an active participant or collaborator in the food hub network / OCFSN or have a sponsor who is. We prioritize funding for BIPOC hubs with limited access. Oh, no, different. Prioritize funding for BIPOC hubs with limited access to grants funding and or hubs located rurally. Then there's project budget review. We will have reporting requirements, which I will get into as well, and resilience strategy impact. This is going to be our working definition of a food hub. If you're curious if you qualify as a food hub, feel free to email me. Would love to chat, set some time one-on-one. We're really trying to make this grant program as accessible to as many folks as possible. But this is our working definition of a food hub. It includes an organization and/or business that engages in hub and hub-like activities that create economic value in their communities by providing dedicated physical and logistical infrastructure and creating markets for locally or regionally produced ranch agriculture or value-added products. The hub must serve more than one farm or ranch. And listed below are some activities that I won't go too much into, but they're listed here and also in the RFP. So that includes purchasing, delivering, distribution of agriculture or value-added products. And of course, again, you must serve more than one farm or ranch. Online marketplaces and retail storefronts that primarily serve as marketplaces for local or regional ranch, agriculture, or value-added products. However, this is not intended for farmers markets and not for food pantries either. And you can connect with the Oregon Food Bank for that. Shared kitchens and micro food manufacturing facilities, mobile marketplaces, and Veggie RX distributions. This is going to be, I think it's going to be quick because we're trying, like I said, I think the theme of today is make it accessible. So this is going to be somewhat quick. So the reporting review, this is it. This is what our report is. And I just want to clarify that our reporting isn't asking anything other than these right here. So we're not asking, for pounds of food moved. We're not asking for long-term tracking. We're not asking for that. What we are asking are for these 3 items here. So we want to be able to see project photos or short videos, before and afters would be great. The reporting is due 6 months after the funding is received, so November 1st, 2024. And this is more so to build an impactful narrative, which I will go on to in the next slide, I believe, to show the importance of funding and resilient local and regional food systems in Oregon. In addition to that, we require you to submit a 250 to 500 words on project outcomes / challenges. So what were your challenges and how you were able to overcome those and what those outcomes were? And how does this funding support resiliency in your community? And similar to the next slide that I'll be talking about, if you're worried about the wording or not sounding a certain way or convincing or impactful, I'm here to support with that. So y'all make the tables turn, you make everything run, and I am here to help you to put that into words. So if you need like a brain dump session where you just tell me exactly what it is that your impacts and your outcomes, and then we can create a narrative together. We really want everyone to have an equal opportunity to apply to this grant and be successful in this as well. The last bit of the reporting is to provide receipts for all purchases. Photos and copies are okay as well. So these are the 3 components of reporting. I've worked in grants and grant programs, federal grant programs. I would say this is the easiest reporting ever, to my knowledge. And again, we're really wanting to make it accessible to everyone so that you are able to improve the community and local food systems in Oregon. Going a little bit about the last slide on reporting, we're gathering this information to hopefully help us in future legislative sessions. So legislative sessions are very important, and most important in those sessions are public testimonies, whether that's written or oral testimonies. And this is how we're gathering that information for future funding to show the legislator that we need this money to build resilient communities and build local food systems. So again, like previously, if you don't know how to word this, you're concerned that it doesn't sound correct or it doesn't sound impactful. One, I highly doubt that's true, but two, I am here to support you build that narrative. Just wanted to put that out there again. So yeah, at this time, this funding is a one-time thing. We want to make sure that we have captivating and powerful testimonies to build a crucial future for, resilience efforts going forward. Let's see here. And the last bullet point again is just I'm here to support you in however you need. And I'll go over that in just a bit here. In the next slide, not this one. So relatively quickly, I will do a review of the rubric. Here you will see, and this is also posted online as well. So this is just for transparency's sake, so you can go ahead and see how we will be reviewing this, and this will be in the grant review committee as well. There's a total possible points of 7. So these are the rubric points here. You will see that our points are starting down here. The Food Hub is led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, immigrant and refugee communities. You get 4 points for yes, 0 for no. Hubs that have limited access to grants funding and have demonstrated commitment to delivering on OCFSN's mission, strengthening local and regional food systems to deliver better economic, social, health, and environmental outcomes across the states. 1 point for this, if you do meet that requirement, and 0 for no. And then also just highlighting wanting to meet the needs of rural communities and rural local food systems. So you can get 2, 1, or 0 points on this. And this is just kind of our rubric for now. And if you have any questions about that, we can discuss that at the end. We're going to have a little bit of a Q&A session here. These are some of the themes that I noticed in the survey that came up that I'm hoping we can discuss today. But first, I wanted to go ahead and yet again say that I am here for support. Would love to connect some time to do one-on-one if you want to review the application together, if you wanted to go through the application one by one. I am available to do that, so feel free. My email is there, and I'll also put it in the chat as well, so you can copy and paste it into your inbox. So I'm here for support one-on-one. We can do virtual, over the phone, but yeah, just really want to help you be successful in your application. But back to the themes. So and I'm hoping to get some support from the team as well. But the first one is concern over grant writing, not having like a dedicated grant team. That's totally okay. That's totally normal. That is exactly the reason why we want to provide this grant program for all of you, is so that you have that opportunity that you may have not had in the past due to rigorous and competitive grant programs. So this, I think it's about maybe like 3 paragraphs in terms of building that application. So not trying to downplay your concern over that, or anyone's concern over that. I'm just trying to reiterate that this is low barrier. If you need help or you need time with me one-on-one to build that, or if you have materials and you just don't know how to put it into our application because this is your first time, I'm more than happy to sit down with you and do that. So that's the first one addressed. So next is the safety planning and how in-depth there is. So I will go over that in just a bit, but there is a safety planning template, and that's exactly shows what we want y'all to do. And I'll show it in just a bit here. Shannon, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you earlier, not to put you on the spot. Someone mentioned, how will the grants be dispersed, or
Yes. So once we have determined, once folks have signed contracts for the award, we will be mailing a physical check. And that typically takes about 2.5 to 3 weeks once we have all the paperwork from you.
Gotcha. Thank you. Next, there was a question about allowable and unallowable items, such as staff time. Wondering if you, Shin, or Sydney could answer that question.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. So if you need staff time to install your piece of equipment or get that piece of equipment, that would be allowable. Staff time to operate that piece of equipment would not be allowable. Does that make sense? I don't know who asked that question, but does that answer the question?
And then I would also add staff time for doing safety training around getting ready
Allowable.
to operate is allowable.
Sort of staff time to anything to get the equipment going in your operation is absolutely allowable, and please include that in your budget. Staff time to operate the equipment or get it going for its first few rounds of operation are not. And we're not intending to fund staff time or daily ops.
Great, thank you. Now I just wanted to open it up to everyone in the space. So a common theme also was specific pieces of equipment that are and aren't allowed. I was just curious if anyone in the room had any specific, question about X or Y qualifying under that, so we can go ahead and discuss that. I think we have something in the chat.
There was a question in the chat about volume hubs, and when we talk about volume is we're really trying to ensure that the piece of equipment that you're looking to purchase makes sense within your hub. So if you're a hub and you're moving, a pallet of food a week, it doesn't necessarily make sense to invest in a large walk-in for you. Or if you're busting at the seams, that's what we want to try and correct for. So we just really want to try and match volume to need, and to the cost of the equipment. So being really thoughtful about what is the next step of equipment we actually need. Because really what we're trying to do is make sure that as many hubs as possible get the support they need to take the next steps to grow as they want to. And I can't remember who asked that. Did I answer that well enough for you? Oh, sharing. Yep.
And then I think just in case folks are on their phones and not able to read the chats, there was a question that Lindsay had posed, which is equipment transport allowable? So whether hiring someone to move it or moving it ourselves, and the answer to that is yes. And Yana had asked if we have one big piece, a walk-in, and some smaller pieces like carts and shelving, should we just do one application to larger category? I think the answer to that is also yes.
I think the answer is dependent on how much, if you're buying a walk-in, Yana, does that is the category actually big enough to add some additional things to? And I wonder if it is or isn't. I think you go either way, because you can make a case that racking and shelving and the pieces of equipment that you're using to move things around with are actually a worker safety grant.
That is exactly the question I was just typing. So there are some items that I would like to purchase for my food hub that could be kind of considered infrastructure or safety. And so, are they sort of fair game either way? So for example, an ergonomic, as you can see from how little I am on my screen, I'm really far away from my computer right now. So like an ergonomic computer setup, I am considering a safety issue because the tilt of my head right now is unsustainable. And so how do you all think about that? It could go either way in my mind.
I honestly, Christy, given the case that we made with the legislature about why these funds are important, that particular example, I would rather see under worker safety. We
Okay.
made a case that worker safety is really important, that we want to take care of our workers, especially our workers in rural communities that are often left out and often don't have as much access to training, just don't have as much access to anything. So we made that case really strongly. And then we also made a case that investing in the physical infrastructure of moving food would be really important to releasing constraint on the movement of food in, again, especially rural communities.
Okay.
So, you know, Shin and I and the hub cohort, you know, we all sort of made this up. But I think anytime we're answering a question, it's sort of going back to what's the case we made to the legislature to try and get to the truest answer to our mission with this particular piece of funding. So Aaron Maidlow, you had a question about software, and I would say software is not allowable, you know, thinking about how we made this case to the legislature. Other
Jasmine also
questions?
asked Jasmine asked a question about small wares for various kitchen equipment, like pots and pans and things, which I also kind of have that question too.
Can you make a case that they're about worker safety?
Well, do you want me to give some context? I mean, I'm asking
Yeah.
I'm asking for larger kitchen equipment. So I'm asking for a hood fan, a range, convection oven, and a mixer, a big immersion blender, those kinds of things. And so these small wares are a critical component to actually like do the processes that I am wanting to do. I mean, it's not out of the question for our food hub to just throw in like that money. I'm just wondering if it's like, you know, when I'm applying for the RFSI grant, it's like they want to see that you have every piece of little equipment that you possibly. So I just, in order to do the things that I'm requesting for this grant, small wares are a piece of that, and we don't currently own them.
You know what? I'm going to group source this. My inclination, again, making this up as we go, right? My inclination is that yes, you can include small wares in it, but I would really not like to see that be a large percentage of your budget, because again, we're trying to launch the critical pieces of infrastructure that are just too big a bite. We talked a lot about it's just too big a bite for these organizations to, you know, buy a lift gate and get it installed. They just don't have the budget for it. So, you know, if you want to tuck some small wares in there, I'm not going to scream at you, but I would like to not see it be a huge part of your budget.
It'll be less than 10%.
Food Hub Group, does that sound like a reasonable compromise to come up with here? If you need some auxiliary pieces of equipment to operate your new equipment, if it's say less than 10%.
Or less than 10%.
5%. That's,
and you know, put it into rather than like 4 spoons, you know, 4 spatulas, just say kitchen equipment or something.
I was just gonna put a small wares line item in there. And it will probably be less than 10%. It's gonna be a small amount in the grand scheme of things. But I was just wondering if I should
keep it small, and I can say I can fully support that.
Okay.
I get the argument you're making. I just want to stay really true to the argument that we've made to the legislature, because I don't want the legislature to be like, you just bought a bunch of whisks, seriously? You know, I don't want to get that back.
You can also choose to throw it out if it's like, I mean, you can
Well,
my
I think-
request if that makes sense down the road, if that makes more sense. I won't have any hurt feelings over it.
So I think the other thing to add here, because yes, I think we can add that into, let's say, that FAQ document that Deirdre is going to pull together after all these really phenomenal questions. Thank you all for asking. You know, I think the other pieces, because we don't know exactly what everyone's going to be asking for and whether or not we're going to, you know, how much of the budget we're going to consume, we may at some point have to make some decisions about what gets funded, and how much of your total ask. So I think with that in mind, make sure that you're asking what are the things that are top priority for you to get funded?
Thanks, Jen, for that reframe on that. So we're buying what you're selling, Jasmine, but we might throw it out anyway. Other questions? Is everyone going to apply? Is most everyone going to apply? I hope.
Can how
Um,
many of you, I have a sort of question for the crowd here, because we just applied for the ODA equipment grant, and we've applied for another grant through ODA that would fund some of this stuff. And that one we won't know. Like, the timing of these is bonkers, because, you know, like if we applied for this one in 2024, it's dependent on those ones that we won't know about until after we would find out about this. So I don't know. Did anyone else apply for funding for these types of things under different grants, like specialty crop block grant or the equipment and infrastructure grant through ODA? And what is your plan with that? Like, if you're, I mean, I'm like, well, I should apply for this too, because it's not guaranteed, but also what if I get that later and then I have all these funds that I have to spend on the same things?
So Erin, how that was explained to me is that that's fraud. Like if you actually spend that money, you know, you can't apply for the same things for two, you can't apply for the same things for two grants, but if you get one, then yeah, you're just like turning it down fully. For the RFSI equipment grant, you can't partially accept the RFSI equipment grant. You have to accept the whole thing, or you have to just say no. And that was going to be one of my next questions with OCFSN is, can we partially accept what you are offering us? Does that question make sense? If I asked for some of the similar equipment with the RFSI and that goes through fully, then can I reduce my ask with OCFSN after the fact? Is that a helpful reframe, Erin, of the question?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's not even the same equipment though, but I can't use, like, if I can't use what I would be applying for this one for if I don't get what I applied for the other one for. So, but I would find out about this one first. Yeah, it's just confusing. I don't know if there is an actual answer. Yes, that does make sense. But yeah, just timing.
Yeah, it unfortunately, I think we realized after the fact that maybe it would have been really rad if we had gotten these on the ground earlier, so that, say, some of you could have used these grants for match in your applications for RFSI. But I got to tell you, we are imperfect souls and didn't see that one coming. Didn't think didn't think about how these grants would actually nest in. We were really just thrilled about having these grants, but we didn't think about how they might nest into all of this other random money that came down the pipe kind of at the same time. So I apologize that there was an unfortunate mismatch there. I think for you, Erin, like, it sounds to me like you just need to think really strategically about what is the most important use of this particular grant, and or you could wait and apply for this particular grant in the fall cycle after you find out about your RFSI.
Yeah, I think that's what the plan is do the worker safety one, because there's some smaller things that we need for that, and then do the, depending on what our other ones are, then do the fall one. But yeah, thank you for doing this. I was definitely not trying to complain about it.
I'm not hearing this as complaints, and Yana, I'm not hearing you as whining at all. It's just you look back at things, you're like, God, if I were just half a point smarter, we would have caught that and moved at a different speed, and we would have created all of this advantage. And it's the joke of like, oh, the feds decide something's happening, and like ODA didn't even know they were going to be dealing with these RFSI funds until I think it was April or May of last year, and they had to pull a program together out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So like,
and we were waiting to find out when we were going to get our money, and they were like,
yeah,
it's directed to your accounts. Nope, I ended up with a physical paper check. I don't think I've ever deposited a check that large before. and then forgot to take a selfie.
So I appreciate the feedback, and it helps us learn for when we get lucky again and we advocate successfully and we get some funds into this organization, is to, oh, now we need to understand what is the grant landscape of this year and try and build our programs so that they can be leveraged for those federal programs that require big ass chunks of match that nobody has. So the whining, the screaming, the yelling is totally useful as long as it's done respectfully and joyfully, which it usually is. So there we go. Aren't we lucky? Kiara, you had a really complicated question that I couldn't read all of. So if you could apply for correct, Kiara, we have a note to Yana asked a very similar question, which is that, yes, as of right now, we have the grant. We're not allowing an application for year 2. If we don't expend as much funding on year 1 as we think we will, we could revisit that. But for now, you know, if you get funded this year, you know, we're leaving space for other folks to get funded next year.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Thanks, Erin Mabel.
Hey, Sydney, could you
Yeah.
circle around to that question that I just had about only or if I was awarded the full amount and didn't actually need the full amount, is that okay?
Oh, yeah, sorry, we did not answer that question.
That's okay.
Shin, I'm going to direct that to you because really it's an administrative issue in terms of like the emotions of the thing. Sure, give the money back to us and we'll redirect it. Like we want this to be as advantageous to you as possible.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's helpful for other people, but how I did it with the RFSI and this grant is I basically anything that required installation or like labor associated with it, since RFSI wouldn't cover that, I just put it under OCFSN, and then anything that didn't require installation, I put under RFSI. But that gives me still like some room, like on my OCFSN budget, that I could move some equipment over just in case I didn't get the RFSI. You know, that's kind of what I'm thinking there.
Thanks for that context, Jasmine. Based off of the way that I am understanding it, when we make an offer for whatever you submit your application for, when that award letter comes, I think at that point, ideally, you can let us know if we need to change that number. That would be, I think, ideal. And I will probably have to get back to y'all to think through what happens if y'all don't hear back about RFSI until much later on, and now there's unallocated funds that are already sitting in your account that would not be used for whatever you had originally intended it to be, and what that process looks like. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. The timing's just complicated, and I might just make it easy for you guys and just not do that. That sounds like a pain.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is the first time that we've gotten funding for this specifically. And so the only way we've been able to pull this together is because of all the conversations that we've had in this room and others like it. And so I think, we really appreciate all of the feedback that we've gotten up through this point, and imagine we'll continue to get from you all. And we'll do our best to figure it out and make adjustments when reasonable and needed. And yeah, just to keep talking to us.
Lindsay. Current. Lindsay, can you explain a little bit more? Transportation. Oh, because you're moving your equipment from one place to another.
Yeah, I wonder
Is that?
Yeah, I wonder if the funds have to be, you know, used kind of concurrently, like, oh, applying for a grant for new equipment, so that'll include transportation and training on its safety. But could the grant also just in part be asked for funds to move our current equipment, since this new space will be increasing in the volume of our sales and the products we can offer?
I think that's not really, my gut says that's not really the intent of these funds.
I'm just
You know,
trying
I
to.
want to, I want to say yes. I'm like
Ask for it
really
not.
wanting to say yes. What's that?
Yeah, I just want to understand the full possibilities of what I could ask for or not. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, other questions in this group?
Do I have to keep it to equipment and like what qualifies as equipment, or can I ask about a logistical question that I'm having with uploading documents?
Oh,
It's just that there's not an upload for the worker safety plan for the infrastructure grant specifically. And I have an overzealous employee who made a template for each piece of equipment.
I love that for you.
And so they're awesome. I'm great. We're going to use them. But I don't, even if I just had one, I'm not sure where to upload it.
Well, first of all, thanks for letting me know. That probably is just a tweak that I need to add in. So,
And if you guys aren't getting this from this conversation, again, we're sort of making this up as we go. We are learning just as much as you are about this grant every time we have a conversation about it. Deidre's role is very specifically to sort of catch all of these questions, all of these needs, and resolve them with, you know, her experience and with Shin and my help. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to flag, hey guys, I can't upload my thingy, which makes it really hard for me to apply for this grant. Because, you know, we want to catch those mistakes too.
all right.
So I know that there's like a section.
Try it
Do you-
again. I just added the upload.
Oh, okay, great. And that's
Oh,
what you guys want, right? You want like the template that you provided filled out, and then you also want the 250 word explanation on the application.
Yeah, let me be a little clear about the worker safety plan. Let me answer some questions about that. So the intent of the worker safety plan is for you to demonstrate to the reviewers that you understand this piece of equipment, you understand the specific risks that it brings to your employees or to your workers in your workplace, and that you have a plan to make sure that you're not injuring folks. You're not crushing folks, you're not running over them, you're not pinching folks, you're not having things fall on them. You know, we would be really, really sad to fund expensive pieces of equipment that then harm somebody in your organization. So we're asking for a worker safety plan. We offered those templates as a way to evaluate your pieces of equipment, to give you a framework of understanding of these are the things that you need to look at, and this is how you can think about worker safety. You are not required to use that template. You can write a paragraph, but make sure that you are demonstrating who's responsible for training, who's responsible for managing these hazards, what the hazards are, and exactly what you're doing in your hub to make sure that folks are not going to get hurt. Please, let's not, you know, bust somebody's toe with a lift gate. It's going to make me cry, and you don't want to see me cry. I'm a very ugly crier.
And we definitely.
Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Sydney.
And also we try to include as many templates for folks to have a starting place. And I think one of the things that this group has done really well is shared standard operating procedures and other things that y'all have created in your own separate orgs, and, you know, having those available to share with other folks who are at, you know, different stages of their work or looking at revamping their docs. So we're just creating a vault of knowledge, really.
So just to be clear, so the safety plan then is not for the org in general or the business in general, it's for the specific thing that's being funded through this, right? Okay.
Correct. I just really want to understand that you all know how to operate this piece of equipment safely and that you'll take care of your peeps. I'm not even going to look at these. The reviewers, the reviewers want to know that. Got some more form stuff going in there. Other questions? We've
Yeah,
got about
feel free to
15
just look
more
at that
minutes.
later. I'm just putting things, the little details in there.
I appreciate that. Those ones I can do fixes on later.
Oh, do you want to see letters of support?
Nope,
No.
we don't need them.
No, the only thing that we really need is if an applicant is not like an active participant in OCMSN or in the Food Hub network, but that applicant collaborates with one of y'all or someone else who's part of the network, then that's where in the very beginning of the application, they need to have a partner kind of vouch for them.
Are there
And
any
it's-
things that you don't want to see that you have in your mind that you don't want to see on these grants?
Oh. I don't think so.
I mean, as long as you can make an argument for the safety value of it on the safety grant.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I would encourage folks to
I think we're pretty open
Yeah.
to what your projects look like. We're pretty open to hearing from you, hubs, what you need to increase your capacity or improve worker safety in your hubs. We recognize that we don't really know all the programs that you do. We don't really know exactly how you're moving food around or how you're accepting food really in our bones the way you do. And so we're open to seeing what that means.
Yeah, so some creativity is encouraged. I think to back up to the question that was just asked, what do we not want to see? We don't want to fund food pantries and we don't want to fund farmers markets necessarily, because those are items that historically are easier, have other sources of funding. So this is very specifically about food hubs. And I think we also know that food hubs is a pretty general, can be used very differently in different places, which is why we have that definition of a food hub, a working definition of a food hub that we provided to allow for some of that nuance.
And to be clear, like we understand that a lot of you do some food pantry or food pantry like work as part of your food hubbing, but we're really after your food hubbing work. And if that supports your food pantry work, great.
Oh, and one last thing to point out too is I know Deidara had said it very explicitly before, but we're also wanting to make sure that the food hub serves multiple producers, not just one. And that's important for it being a hub.
Did you already answer Jasmine's question about the character versus word limit? That's in the
Yeah,
chat.
those are supposed to be, they're all supposed to be words, but it might just be a back end thing that I need to adjust. Oh, sorry, it's 500 word. I'm updating that right now. Okay, that one's all set.
Other questions? Well, we have all of us. Thank you for asking such great questions. This is really helpful and I think will be well, we'll get some FAQs, and when we push out the next round of funding, we'll make some updates. Other questions? Did we get them all? Yeah. Really?
So that public, I have one more.
I knew Jasmine would have one.
That public testimony question on the application, that's what you all want to share with like legislation.
Yeah. And in terms of the reporting requirements, I listed those below so that there is that checklist of like making sure that folks know what they're signing up for. But we'll create a whole new jot form for y'all to actually submit those items in the next 6 months. But yes, that's kind of who the audience is.
Okay, I just kind of read that as like somebody from the public, like kind of like a letter of support statement, but you want us to just publicly say how this funding would impact our org. Okay, gotcha.
Because ideally they'll go back and ask for more.
Exactly, Christy.
Yes. And it's very, one of the things that is very powerful about us is that we are distributed throughout the whole state, and that we really, really are embedded in rural communities. And that's really important to the legislature to understand and to know about us, is that we can touch rural communities and we have those relationships, and that we have impacts that are very direct. Other questions? All right, y'all. Do you want a few minutes back in your day, a break between meetings? All right. Thank you. Thanks for a great discussion. Appreciate all
Thanks,
of you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Super helpful.
Hey, Dira, we're so
Nice to
glad you're
meet
here.
you. Dear Dira.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See y'all.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Oh, wait, I was supposed to be. Oh, no, I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Thought I had a meeting that was being
Thank you,
held on this,
Shannon
but I'm on another
and
one.
Sydney.
Bye.
Bye.